For Apple, just handed Google the keys to Siri, and we've talked about this before because it was rumored last year. I want to say last year, Deuce, right? We brought this up.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So, I think around the January timeframe, Apple announced a multi-year deal worth about $1 billion with Google Gemini to power the next generation of Apple's foundation models. So you remember Apple had this big thing, years ago. Everybody kind of remembers it. The what was it, Apple Intelligence and all of those things,
Well,
and like,
intelligence.
yes, Apple Intelligence was kind of a big thing, and like a lot of that didn't come to fruition. Some of it did, like some of the text and the text improvements and proofread and stuff like that. But so Apple looked at OpenAI, they looked at Anthropic, but they chose Google. And then looks like last Wednesday around sometime, Google confirmed that the new Gemini-powered Siri is officially launching later this year. So that's an official announcement. So that means that when we get the new devices, what is it, September, October, usually when they have those, Siri is going to have a whole new thing that's going on.
The two biggest producers of cellular devices in the world. I mean, there are other OSs still out there that are live, right? But you got to think iOS, Android, Apple, Google, they run it. The fact that they're teaming up for this type of partnership, a Gemini enabled Siri, that's kind of crazy because
That's
what
crazy,
else?
man. It's
Because,
crazy.
I mean, if you think about it, that's the tip of the iceberg. What else will they unlock? What else will Apple give them the keys to? What might Google hand over to Apple? Another thing that's really interesting, though, is this news is coming off the heels of Tim Cook announcing
That's
he's
facts.
stepping down, right? So, what makes this to me a little bit interesting or even dicey is like, all right, you know what? I wonder if that was one of the things that was blocking them in the first place, right? Because, like you said, this is all very new and happening in the real time. However, like you said, it's the best of both worlds. And I'd be interested to see, like I said, what else could happen. But we've also talked about Apple had to give up that AI race a long time ago. Apple Intelligence, we know, like you said, they are great with their hardware and devices. They are not winning that AI software battle. They were just too far behind, and I think they realized it in order to catch up.
Either way, that kind of leads me into the next thing. So, and well, to give my 2 cents and my kind of perspective on that, I think it's because Google doubled down on the consumer segment, right? Like they just kind of hyper focused. That's their market, and they kind of really focused on that, which leads me into my next question. You've been talking about Anthropic and all this other stuff, advancements. We've been talking about that with Claude Code, Claude Cowork, and just all these things, and Anthropic just on the coding realm. For you being a developer and all of those things, does it seem like
Right.
Anthropic is going to be the coding king now, and then Google is going to be the consumer king? Like, is that where the
Feel
divergence is?
like,
It's like,
I mean, if you think about it, Anthropic has been really killing it with code, and we've talked about this. They have been sticking to their guns as far as what got them, kind of out the mud. Code has been their go-to. OpenAI has come close. Claude and Anthropic and Claude Code has, just up the ante every time, right? They stay competitive, and I think that is their sweet spot. And it's interesting because a few things has happened with Anthropic lately, and this is a perfect segue because not only have they been doing well with Claude Code, they have now introduced Claude Design, right?
mm-hmm.
And we talked about Mythos, right?
Yep. Topic
Now they've
mythos,
dropped
yeah.
Claude Design, which is pretty sweet, right? And
Yeah, we'll get into that for
I have
sure.
not
Yeah.
played with it yet, but it is definitely on my list, and it's probably top 5 of things to do and to check out. But it's a great vision model. It's pretty sweet from what I've seen. And if you pair that with Claude Code, right, you have realistic prototypes, product wireframes and mockups, pitch decks, presentations,
Yeah.
anything you can think of. I want to say this because Anthropic is doing so well across the board right now. You know, well, let's talk into a little bit of money because the money play is at play right now, and
Mm.
Google has decided to put anywhere from 10 to 40 billion, and
With a B?
Anthropic
Say
with a
what you said.
B,
With a B. Oh, man.
Billy, right?
Billy.
So, but this investment is already after Amazon initial $5 billion
Yeah.
investment. So, right. However, they're probably looking to add something to their suite of tools, whether it's their cloud 365 or even their, Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, things of that nature. But that's just what I think. But I mean, if we think about it, right, like you just said, OpenAI just dropped a 5.5, but you know what else they just announced? It dropped Images 2.0. And when I tell you Nano Banana, look out, it is looking pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, coming off the heels or the cusp or the inception of that Microsoft deal falling apart, also here goes Images 2.0. You know what? And I'm not saying that those two things are correlated, but it's never fails. OpenAI said, we got some. You know what? We're taking those servers offline from Sora too. And here goes Images 2.0. I have not played with it yet or tried it out,
Oh, you know
but
I jumped in now. You know I jumped in on that.
okay. So let me ask you this. In comparison, because Nano Banana for me personally has been a pretty stark standard as far as creating things that I really need, including typography, words, realism. How does Images 2.0 stand the latest Nano Banana model?
Yeah, Nano Banana 2 or Nano Banana Pro. That was the industry standards. I would say like a lot of people were kind of leveraging that and still do. Like I still find this stuff with Nano Banana. There's still, some areas, but I would say I just don't like the naming convention. I love Nano Banana Pro, right? Like, I mean, I love what Google and Gemini, they got good with their naming convention. OpenAI, as you said before, I think we had a whole episode about their naming conventions, but
Yeah,
the image 2,
it's
whatever they're calling it
I
on that
guess
side, I
it's
wish they give it a cool name.
GPT Imagen 2.
Too, exactly. So, anyway, but it is definitely solid, coherent. Like, Deuce, you can make like comic books now. Like, if you had an idea of a character
Hey,
and kind of put it in there, it
listen,
has like the words, like, it's like, you can have full infographics. So, for entrepreneurs that are at work and everything like that, if you have access to leverage these type of models, and it might come through co-work, because the partnership or potentially, whatever that case is, how they work it out. Long story short, if you need to build an infograph, I would highly suggest using that. Not only does it pull in data, other context and everything like that, because it's a thinking image model is what they're saying, and it's, reasoning and
and
all
not
this other stuff. But that, I mean, it's just very solid. And to me, it's a little bit faster than the original one that came out. And maybe that's because they're not spending all the GPU power with Sora. They're kind of weaning that down and serving, this model for the images, man. But whew. There's great news, basically, if you have expense also in the vein of our entrepreneurs. From the sources, they're saying that reportedly 94% of small businesses that adopted AI agents this year or platforms such as those that I mentioned before, they cut costs by 30% in Q1.